I'm laughing over here because let me know in the chat if you guys can hear us okay. Um, it's been a little bit. Clint's laughing at me because the entire time that we're kind of getting ready for this stream, I'm on the back end trying to. I think it's mirrored. I'm trying to get kind of my hoodie all appropriate, and yeah, it didn't work out. But Clint was laughing the entire time. Chat, let me see if there's ones in the chat for audio. Can you guys let me know? I see a lot of hashtags. We'll definitely talk about that. Don't worry about it. I got ones in the chat. Great stuff. Clint, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Good to have you here. I know we're still working from home, and we may have some pets in the background. I know I heard your dog. My dogs are out there being a little rambunctious since my wife had to go to work at the hospital. But how you been, man?
I'm good. Just winding down here on Madden 21, and yeah, that's my dog laying behind me. So if he barks and says hi during the stream, let's just roll with that.
Sounds good. It's going to definitely be a little bit more laid back than the first one. I think the first one was a lot more presenting information. And here we're going to be going through a lot of the Madden 21 closed beta feedback. A lot has happened since over the last month. We've had some gridiron notes go out for franchise. We've also had some gridiron notes go out for gameplay and AI gameplay updates and playbooks from AW. Huge shout out to AW for all of his support and kind of getting that stuff out there to our players. We also had the Madden 21 beta. We also had just a lot of stuff happening out there after the beta. So all you can do is smile, and we just keep trucking forward. The one thing I do want to highlight real quick though before we get into anything today is I do want to acknowledge to the community regarding the hashtag Fixed Madden franchise. Really do appreciate everything and all the people out there in the community leaders participating in that movement, sharing that feedback. I want you guys to know that your feedback is still being heard. The teams are definitely in the process of getting you guys some more updates as to specifically what's being done, probably by mid-August, maybe a little bit sooner. So I want to acknowledge that before we get into the stream because it's a very important thing, right? I think the players deserve some feedback on what is going on there. We've been talking a lot with Sean Grady on the community team, making sure that everything that's being communicated is very clear to our players. They have an understanding what that is. If there's anything that's kind of leaving some questions, we want to make sure that there's some clarity there. So by mid-August, we should see more information coming out. But I do want to acknowledge that before we get into anything because it's just a very important topic, right? There's no point in really talking about these other things unless we address that first. So, Clint, anything else you want to say real quick before we go ahead and jump into kind of the Madden 21 closed beta feedback?
I think I would just add, the power of our community is loud and clear, and we hear our community, we hear that they love franchise mode, and it's really important. And like you said, that's going to be addressed here in the coming weeks. So stay tuned, and I'm really excited to talk about gameplay today.
Good stuff. All right. So, guys, we're definitely going to go ahead and go through things. I'm going to be maneuvering or managing things on my end with all the information. We'll walk through this. And Clint has like a run a show on his end. He'll have, we just have like a list of things that we're going to talk about. One thing I do want to highlight is that we do have gridiron notes going out at the end of the stream that will have a lot of this information captured for those folks out there that want to go back, reread it. Also, the archive for this stream will be saved as well. So you can go back and re-listen to it. A lot of content creators out there do like to talk about kind of some of these topics, and we want to make sure that you guys have gridiron notes, also the archive available to you. All right, let's go ahead and talk about additional gameplay fixes, Clint. So let me go ahead and pull up my trusty sheet right here. First up, regarding additional gameplay fixes, I know that during the Madden 21 closed beta, there were some things that we didn't talk about, right? And I think that's that there's certain gameplay features in there that were just there. And we want to talk a little bit about that today, especially like celebration mechanic and some other items. So let's go ahead and dig into that first. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this list right here as we walk through some of these items. But yeah, celebration mechanic.
Yeah, so just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who played the beta and gave us feedback. That stuff is always super valuable to us, and even more so this year, getting more people's hands on the game. While we're working from home, getting more games played and more feedback is super important for us launching a really high quality product. In that feedback, we noticed that some of the gameplay features that were new this year were noticed by a lot of our players, and we hadn't talked about them yet. And there were actually questions in some of the beta feedback. So we thought we'd address those. And like you said, one of the first ones that came up was the changes that we made to the left trigger on the control mapping, left trigger or L2 for PlayStation users out there. That used to be the precision modifier, but with our new skill stick system we put in this year for ball carrier moves, that is now the sole mechanic for celebration run or celebration loco. So if you want to swag your way into the end zone, you just hold that button down, and that's how you trigger the celebration animations. And it's really important to note because in the past, the precision modifier has been relied on for a couple of years to do steerable ball carrier moves. Because the steerable moves are now unlocked by ratings of the players, we no longer needed that button mechanic to unlock that steerable set of moves. And we also heard last year a lot of our players wanted more accessible controls to do that swag celebration loco into the end zone. And it was a 3-button combo, which was really hard for a lot of folks to remember, in the heat of the moment. So remember that left trigger is that celebration loco mechanic. And most importantly, while you're using it, you are, probably going to fumble if you get tackled. So you want to make sure you use that in the open field and use it when it's the right time.
All right. I know we also have a precision modifier. There's been some updates there if you want to go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, just like I said, the reasoning of no more precision modifier is the ratings give those steerable moves. They start to scale up with a rating of 70 in the ball carrier special move rating. So for example, if you have a juke rating of 70 or higher, you can do steerable moves, and the higher your rating, the more steerable the move is just naturally. And what I mean by steerable is when you finish your ball carrier move, if you finish your juke, whatever direction you're holding your left stick in is the exit direction for the ball carrier as he leaves that animation or that special move. And the more fidelity is tied to the higher the rating of the player.
Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about also pre-play defensive adjustment. I know that was one of the things that you highlighted in the gridiron notes. Can you give a little more context on that?
Yeah, again, another point of feedback we got from the beta, players were confused why we changed some of the defensive keys in pre-play. And the primary reason is the one we're going to talk about next, which is the new defensive back lock-on mechanic, which is a mechanic you can actually activate in pre-play. And by using the LB or L1 button, you lock your player into man coverage behavior on any receiver that you want. And when you activate this, what it is you're now steering your leverage, your positional leverage as a defender relative to your lock on target rather than the field. So it gives you a little bit more control of who you're trying to cover and less oversteering, but it comes at the risk of defending cut moves and route running. So you actually have a timing window that you have to react to the cut move of the receiver you're covering so you don't get roasted out of the cut while you're using the lock-on mechanic. So it's not a cover me free button, but because we implemented that mechanic, we had to change around some of the pre-play mechanics. Again, I know that we did this last year, and that was an obstacle for some of our players for a couple days or a couple weeks at the beginning of the cycle. But over time, players got used to it, and we're confident that players are going to get used to it again this year, making some of those minor changes to defensive pre-play.
Okay. I also know that we talked a little bit about ball carrier archetype run styles. I have some images that I can kind of put up on the screen right now, or during the stream, that we can talk a little bit about. But just wanted to kind of highlight that. We have a few here. For example, we have agile, agile small, agile tall, bruiser, bruiser quick, and bruiser heavy. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. And I think we have some examples of players that kind of fall in these categories. So let's go ahead and start with agile. And for those people that, again, are just tuning in, let you know a lot of this is going to be covered in the gridiron notes where you can get those details. But for the sake of what we're doing here, we're just going to talk about some of these guys, give you some examples, and give you some context to it. So let's go and talk about agile.
Yeah, so just to provide some context here, this is one of the things that I'm really most excited about with the skill stick system that we're introducing this year. And there's some nuance in the animations that come with that are based on your player type, meaning your height, your weight, certain ratings. So agile, for example, has turn rates and change of direction that's faster and smoother than other players. And they also have quicker special moves. So your jukes and spins with an agile player are going to be a little bit faster than other types of players. And this agile archetype, ball carrier archetype, is applied to players who play skill positions. So none of the big guys, just running backs, receivers, DBs. They have to have an 80 agility rating or higher, and they have to be under 225 pounds. And the cool thing about all of these archetypes, and again, they're all listed in the blog that we're going to release so you can kind of dig into the details. There's a lot of visual nuance in the run cycles you're going to see with these players. So when you're running with a big heavy lineman who maybe just recovered a fumble, he's going to look and feel different than if you're running with a ball carrier like Christian McCaffrey, who's a little bit more fleet of foot per se. So really excited about the depth that this brings to our ball carrier skill stick system, and it's going to differentiate players even more.
Okay. I know we have agile small, so let's go ahead and talk about Tyree. I know Tyreek Hill is one of those examples. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so agile small is very similar to the agile set, but he has players with this archetype have shorter and quicker strides. Like you said, Tyreek Hill is an example of this. They apply to the same ratings and weight thresholds as an agile player, but they're for players who are 5'10" in height or below. So you're going to see a shorter run cycle for players with shorter legs or a shorter build, and it just brings another level of authenticity to our run styles.
Okay. And then I know we have Julio, which he falls more in the agile, tall category. I'm thinking like, is it agile or agile? I
I
know.
think both work.
Okay, okay. I think both work. Talk a little bit about this one real quick here before we jump into the bruiser archetypes.
Yeah, again, very similar to the agile, which agile is examples Christian McCaffrey. Agile tall is Julio Jones. It's just going to have more animation nuance that supports a longer stride length for guys who are 6'2" or taller.
Okay. Let's go ahead and then talk about, I think Bruiser's the next one. I think we got Bruiser, Bruiser small, sorry, Bruiser quick, and then we have Bruiser heavy. Some players that fall in that Bruiser category, of course, CJ Anderson is one of those. Then I also believe for Bruiser quick, we have Derrick Henry, and here's an example, a screenshot of him. Do you want to go ahead and talk about Bruiser in general?
Yeah, so bruisers are kind of on the other end of the spectrum from agile players in that they have slower turn rates. They take a little bit longer to change direction. They have slower special moves, evasive special moves like jukes and spins, but they're more powerful with their power moves like truck and stiff arm. And same kind of rules apply here. Bruiser applies to skill positions and even linemen that have less than an 80 agility rating and are over 225 pounds. So one of the few examples we found of a legit bruiser was CJ Anderson, who I think some of our players probably familiar with the Rams and Broncos over the years. And then Bruiser Quick, again, very similar to Bruiser, but with custom animations for bigger players who have quicker feet. They're known to have quicker feet like Derrick Henry. So again, applies to bruiser skill positions and linemen as long as they have a speed rating of 90 or higher. And then bruiser heavy is the one that we've reserved for the big guys, the guys like me, right? Guys who don't touch the ball a lot. You recover a fumble, you maybe find a bobbling ball up in the air and you catch it. That's going to be reserved for offensive and defensive linemen who are over 290 pounds. And you can definitely tell a difference in both visually and the feel of how these different players run based on their archetype.
Cool. Awesome. So again, those are some of the gameplay features that you guys may have discovered during the Madden 21 closed beta. All this will be captured in the Gridiron notes. I'll be releasing after we kind of finish the stream. What we will do now is talk about like the most upvoted feedback. So this year, just want to talk a little bit about this and kind of give some context. One of the things that are important for us on the community team is every single day, myself and other people on the community team, we're gathering feedback from our players. We're looking at Twitter, we're looking at Reddit, we're looking at our EA Madden NFL forums. You check out Mudhead. There's a lot of places that you can get feedback. We live in an information era where all of this is coming through videos. I mean, people post Instagram videos, YouTube videos. They talk about it on Twitch. And Clint and I have had a lot of conversation about this. Not Gibbs. Huge shout out to him for just a lot of the stuff that he's doing behind the scenes and helping out and getting all the Gridiron notes out there. We've talked a lot about how do we get better at getting feedback from our players to our development teams in a timely manner, but also kind of gauging the amount of conversation. And for people that participate in the Madden 21 closed beta, even Madden 20, Madden 19, we started using a platform called User Voice, right? User Voice is like a platform. Xbox has it. We kind of use it for beta, and we're exploring. We're actually having a lot of conversations. Clint's been involved in these conversations of, can we go ahead and leverage this during the actual game cycle to gather feedback? We're looking at maybe piloting something like that called Madden Voice to go ahead and start gathering that feedback from our players. I don't know if it's going to be a success. I don't know if it's not going to be a success, but we got to try to get that feedback in a certain location that we can then kind of measure some of that feedback, get it over to our development team so they can see what's trending and whatnot. And I just want to bring that up because the tool has been very useful. We got a lot of great feedback from our community when they were doing the upvote system of what works and what doesn't work. So I just want to let you guys know that the community teams are exploring other ways and that we can talk and reach out to our players. We started with, Good Morning Madden. When I first came on board, we were trying to communicate to our players on various platforms. We try to do things on Twitter with Madden NFL Direct. There's just a lot of places, but we know that not every player goes to all those places. So we'll continue to explore that, but I definitely want to talk about like the most upvoted feedback. Clint, how did you guys go about, give some context on when we did this beta, all the information that was coming in. I think we had over 2,900 ideas that kind of came through, and we had people on the back end merging those ideas, right? A lot of them were similar to things that were posted earlier on. How did you guys kind of attack the information when it came down to feedback for the Madden 21 closed beta?
Myself and a few other folks on the team, just at the end of each day, 8, 9, 10 p.m. Would go into the database and start combing through the feedback. And any ideas that were similar, any topics that were the same would be combined. And, like you said, the ideas, we had almost 3,000 ideas, which are actually written up feedback tickets, for lack of a better term. And then on top of that, there's all kinds of upvotes, which also can share ideas. But it's just going through and reading. And, even after day one of the beta, you start to see themes, and then you start to collect each of the items that come in thereafter and start to put them under each of the themes. And you start to see a pretty simple chart of here was the area where we got the most feedback, and it goes all the way down to where we got the least amount of feedback, but we read it all. And we try to act on as much of it as we possibly can. We can't act on all of it due to, time and, all kinds of different things, but the feedback is so extremely valuable to us to get an idea of what our players think of the game that we're about to launch.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and walk through some of the most upvoted feedback right now. I think the number one thing that we saw, was the user on defense felt a little sluggish. Talk to me a little bit about that, because again, I also know that a lot of times, when we're making changes in the game, those changes are there for a reason, and it's kind of looking at kind of the holistic perspective of how does the game play for everyone, right? And I know this was one of the top voted feedback items, but I think that there's some context that needs to be provided here on why maybe this felt the way it did this year.
Yeah, so you're right. This was an area that got the most feedback and the most upvotes. It was also the most polarizing, where you could see a very clear split between those people who wanted this changed and those folks who did not want it changed. And this is one of the items from the beta that we are actually not going to change on a large scale, and that's because the vision of the game and the direction of the game is moving towards a more authentic approach, and having a single player in the middle of the defense take away three or four routes basically can take away numbers to numbers and restrict an offense to throw outside the numbers. Is just it's not realistic. It's not balanced. And if you've been following anything that we've been doing this year through our gridiron notes, balance has been a key theme. That was something that the gameplay team specifically felt very strongly about getting right this year, was gameplay balance. And this is part of that. So in order to make the passing game balanced and the pass defense balanced, we feel strongly that more authentic player movement on the defensive side of the ball is necessary. All that being said, we did do due diligence and investigated for any bugs that maybe made the experience a little bit more cumbersome than expected, and cleaned up as many as those that were pointed out in the beta feedback. But largely, this is going to be unchanged moving forward for launch of Madden 21.
Got it. Okay. And I think that's just one of the things too is we can talk about it near the tail end of the stream when it comes down to the gameplays team approach to kind of making improvements or balancing tuning changes in the game. I know like last year, you guys weren't.
Nowadays, everyone's trying to go remote.
Sorry, just gonna.
Which is why Vonage's remote experts are here to help. They can create a plan so any work can work anywhere. And with their video APIs, they can deliver video services to customers anywhere. So yeah, going remote can be easy. All it takes is a little help.
From one of our remote experts!
Now we're talking.
Weren't as heavy-handed in making those changes, because there were a lot of changes in 19. It felt like there was just a lot of changes, a lot of issues, and we were listening a lot to the community. But the moment we fixed something, it felt like it got out of hand. But in Madden 20, you took a more conservative approach, and we can talk a little more about kind of that approach and how it carries over into Madden 21. Let's go ahead and talk about one of the things that we discussed earlier on when we did this stream, right? And that was when we were talking about the hurdle, we were talking about the truck stick and just trucking players. Part of the things that we were looking for in the Madden 21 closed beta was to hear from our players how that felt kind of with the control changes. And I think there was a lot of feedback in this space, and you guys made a decision. If you want to talk a little bit about your decision, what is it going to be going into Madden 21, and what do you expect players to see?
Yeah, we kind of had a feeling that we'd get this feedback, and one of the other really high areas of upvotes was the hurdle truck change that we had played around with for the beta. This one's actually kind of tough to lose, but we are going to go ahead and change that back for launch. So hurdle's going to be back on the Y and triangle buttons. Truck's going to be back on the right stick. And with that comes some changes to our skill stick system, which I'm going to explain in a minute. But really, the feedback just told us that a lot of players felt like they couldn't get used to this, even in that 4-day beta period, didn't feel intuitive and didn't fully understand why we made the move. So that led us to make the decision to change it back to make the controller mapping a little bit more comfortable. One thing that really showed through very strongly in the feedback was players said, why don't you just put the power in our hands and let us do our own controller mapping? And ultimately, that's where we want to go. It's just not going to be a viable strategy for us this year for a number of different reasons. But at some point, that is something that we are going to want to deliver so players can button map however they choose on whatever console they want. In terms of how skill stick is going to work now, as a result of this change, truck being back on right stick, truck is only going to be chainable. If you remember, our skill stick was created to unlock combo moves and let you chain together all the different evasive moves, all with right stick movements. Truck is now on that skill stick. It can only be chained together with spins. And with spins, you have to truck up on the right stick and then roll the stick in either direction. But you cannot chain together trucks with jukes or dead leg. And then hurdle, moving over to the button pad, we were able to keep the jertle or juke hurdle combo intact. What that's going to be is a steering combo. So if you press the button to do the hurdle, and then you steer your player on left stick by swiveling it right or left, you will branch from a standard hurdle into that side hurdle special move. So we were able to at least keep that part of it intact. We were really excited about this skill stick system for our ball carriers. We're still very excited about it. We think that this change may actually make it a little bit more intuitive for our players. So, when you all get your hands on the game, let us know how it feels based on how it felt in the beta, and hopefully it feels a lot better.
Cool. Another feedback item that we talked about was players aren't reacting to the ball when thrown on offense and defense. You want to talk a little bit about that, what you guys found out with that one?
Yeah. So this one and then the next one we're going to cover was something that really was not unexpected when we released the beta. And a lot of the issues with the players not reacting to the ball are bugs or tuning or remaining work that we had in our catching system. And, the timeline of the beta is what it is. Whatever's in the build at that time, that's what you get feedback on. And so catching wasn't quite as far along as we had hoped. And so we combed through all the feedback, plus what we kind of knew was already there, put together an action plan and tackled as many of those issues in catching as we possibly could. So this is going to be much improved for launch. And it's also going to be an area that we're going to continue to monitor after launch. So if more adjustments are necessary, we use our title updates and keep improving that space.
Cool. I know this was a topic that was discussed pretty frequently. It was about zone coverage just didn't feel effective enough. Like a lot of people were saying that man felt a little overpowered. I do have another slide that goes into detail of all the things that you guys are doing to improve zone coverage. But do you want to talk about that before we go into like those specific items? And by the way, if you need a water break, let me know. I can switch off screen.
I just took one. It's okay. Yeah, zone coverage very similar to the catching space in that it wasn't fully tuned. We still had a lot of tuning to do when the beta went live, but it was at least at a place where we could get feedback on it. It wasn't in a place where the game was unplayable or anything. So a lot of great feedback led to a lot of the things we're about to talk about. We made some logic improvements. We did some tuning on break on ball time and really have it in a really nice and balanced place for launch. We even added some new tunables that we can use for post-launch updates. So if we get feedback that little tweaks are needed here and there, we now have the ability to do that a little bit easier than we have in the past. So again, this is one area that I would like to call out. The feedback from the player, directly from the players, led to some very significant improvements that we're going to be able to use this year and into the future.
Cool. And I threw up the list right here on the zone coverage, like improved react times relative to break on ball, added logic to modify break on ball reactions based on defender facing direction, improved zone behavior for defenders with zone coverage abilities, fixed logic problems in cover 3 halfback wheel routes, improved underneath zones dropping logic, cover 3, cover 2 coverage updates. So there was a lot that was done in this space. Do you want to dive a little bit deeper into any of these specific items? I know they're covered in the gridiron notes, but if you do want to talk a little bit about any of these items, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think the two that we want to talk about here, I won't go over all of them just in the vein of keeping us on time, but the two I really want to talk about are the break on ball reactions. That's number one. So we were able to do something a little bit different and kind of cool this year in that we couldn't just globally tune it up or down because you're never going to get that right. So we were able to granularly tune the break on ball logic of our zone coverage defenders based on their facing direction. So if a player can realistically see the throw, he's going to be able to break on the throw quicker than a player who maybe has his back to the quarterback or cannot see the throw. And then both of those things are going to scale by rating and the matchup between the receiver and the defender based on their assignments on any given play. So that made a huge difference in zone coverage. And this all scales across difficulty levels. So they're not going to break as fast on rookie and pro. They'll break faster on all pro, faster on all Madden, and goes across all of our game styles. And then the second one is the last bullet point in the blog talks about cover 3 and cover 2 coverages are going to get more updates in a title update very soon after launch. There were some very specific issues that we wanted to go after that came through the beta feedback. Those are not going to be in there. They're logic updates for a couple of specific zone route combos. So those will be coming in a title update very soon after launch. But we definitely hit the highest priorities and brought zone coverage to a much more balanced spot.
Cool. Next up, player switching logic doesn't feel intuitive, right? So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Great feedback. Again, this was something we had been messing around with a little bit in the production cycle to try to solve some issues where you got players switched onto a player you didn't really want to. So we thought, hey, we're going to tune this and try to solve these issues, but our player switching logic is such that it's like whack-a-mole. There's so many different situations and alignments of players where you think you have it right for one, it doesn't work quite right for the other. And what we decided to do was just keep it the same as it was in Madden 20, because at the very least, that's what our players are used to. So all the player switching that was in the beta was reverted and is now back to the state it was that our players are used to from previous year.
Cool. I wish I had a sound effect for this one, but it is film study. Dum dum dum. Like I
so excited about this.
I didn't have an opportunity to work on like a sound bite, but film study. It's really interesting because I think one of the things that it's always good to give the perspective on it is that part of the beta is to kind of put stuff in there that maybe we've moved away from, right? Just to kind of gauge what players are thinking and what their feedback is. And some players, liked it. Other players just really didn't like it. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the just the idea behind film study and kind of what you guys are thinking about doing? Because there was some good feedback based off of the player
Absolutely.
feedback that was out there. So at the end of the day, you don't want to when players kind of share that, no one's belittling any of those comments. They're actually really, really important. I think that what was interesting for a lot of us is that when it did go into the beta, like you said, sometimes the builds are a little bit behind when we try to get them out there because we have to go through certification. So decisions were made prior that film study just wasn't going to be there at launch. However, there's just a lot of good feedback that came from it that people kind of figured out like, hey, what can we do in this space to make it better? So I'll let you go ahead and talk a little more about this.
Yeah, the best word that I can use to describe the feedback around the film study ability is polarizing. And for anyone listening who may not be familiar with this ability, it's a superstar ability that allows a defender on defense, once he gets into the zone, can see all the play art of the offense as long as the offense has run a play more than 4 times in a game. And in the vein and motivation of this ability is diversity of scheme on offense. We hear that players want to watch people play and use more diversity in their offensive scheme, and players want to play online and gets more diversity in their offensive scheme. That was the motivation behind this ability. But we kind of knew that it wasn't ready for prime time, but we really wanted to get feedback on it. Yeah. And like you said, the feedback on both sides of I either love it or I really don't love it, all valuable and all valid. Sure. So we are not going to have film study at launch. However, we are going to introduce it later in the cycle via post-launch title update. And with that extra time, we're going to continue to iterate on it. And we're going to take the feedback that we got from the beta and use that to continue to make it balanced and continue to make it in a place where all players can appreciate it and at least figure out a way to strategize around it, so that some players don't think it's overpowered, or some players think it's not something that they want in their game style, or whatever it is. We're kind of thinking through all of those problems, and we're going to use this time to figure out what that ability becomes. And then once everyone's really happy with it, then we're going to introduce it later on down the road.
Very cool. And again, I want to thank those individuals that, didn't just put in the Madden 21 closed beta forum, like film study, don't like it. There were a lot of people that actually went into the comment section and actually used the tool to kind of give examples why they were a little bit concerned about it and what they didn't like and what they did like. And that's just something that we're hoping we can leverage, and we're going to do our part on the community team to try to give some guidance to our players on when they're giving feedback, kind of where that quality of feedback is, so that you guys can better take that information and make those adjustments to things. Because I think we saw a lot of great things in the comments from players, where it's like film study was just the main topic, but as you dug into that feedback, and you guys were listening to people that were talking in YouTube videos and Twitch streams, which was all great. But again, definitely use that commenting system, was very helpful, and hopefully we can provide some structure there. Next up, I want to go ahead and talk about is fatigue abilities for scrambling QBs are too severe. Do you want to talk a little bit about that one, Clint?
Yeah, just a quick refresher. So when we first talked about gameplay features for 21, we talked about how we had introduced new fatigue penalties for out-of-position ball carriers. So anybody who was not a running back by trade, after they were your primary ball carrier on multiple plays in a row, would start to suffer severe fatigue penalties. And that's what this feedback was about. And the feedback was specifically saying, when I scramble with my quarterback, he gets tired too quickly. Also, on the opposite side of the aisle, in the same area of feedback, was it's too hard for me to stop scrambling quarterbacks. So that made it a little bit more difficult to figure out what to do here. But once we dug in and read through some feedback and contacted some other folks in the community to get more clarity here, we felt like the right thing to do was decrease the fatigue penalty if you're just running and not taking any hits. So if you scramble with your quarterback, do a jet sweep with your slot receiver, and you run out of bounds or slide or do whatever and not take a hit from a defender, the fatigue penalty is going to be decreased, but it's still not going to be what it was previously. It's still going to be a more severe penalty than you've experienced in the past. It's going to be a little bit less than it was in the beta. On the flip side, if you do take a big hit or a tackle from a defender, then the fatigue penalty's actually been increased. So if you put these out of position ball carriers in harm's way, you're going to actually get them more tired and they're going to become less effective. Whereas if you use your players strategically and avoid the hits, then you'll be able to keep rolling them out there a little bit more frequently.
Cool. Let's talk about pass rush. So AI pass rush, AI pass rush doesn't seem as effective as a user pass rush. Let's go and talk about that real quick.
Yeah, this was just a small bit of tuning, and it very much related to zone coverage. So anyone out there who knows our playbook and coverage guru, Anthony White, one of the first things he said when we went through all the zone coverage feedback and looked at some of the videos was, well, the pass rush isn't doing anything. And, we dug in, and the AI controlled pass rush. So any pass rusher, whether on your team or a CPU team who's not user controlled, was a little bit underpowered, not much based on the data that we collected from the beta. They were getting just under 1 sack per game, and we would like that to be closer to 2. So we just did a very slight bit of tuning to make AI pass rushers a little bit more lethal, somewhere between like 2.5% and 5% across different game styles. But you should see AI controlled pass rushers, especially the superstars, be a little bit more powerful and guys that you need to be aware of in the deep passing game.
Cool. Last but not, the last one I have here is past max throw power passing feedback penalty. And that was kind of like, I think the last one, the most upvoted feedback section that we're going to be talking about on stream. Any context here?
Yeah, there was 2 really important pieces of feedback we took out of this. So this was a new thing we added this year to give more transparency to our players about throw results. But what ended up happening in the beta was it actually made it a little bit more confusing. And one of the things that our players were confused about was the wildly inaccurate passes that would occur when this feedback would show up. And that was because there were cases where you could get double dinged. You could both be hit with an accuracy penalty and a power penalty at the same time, but you're only given feedback about the power penalty. So in these cases, when the power penalty is activated, we are not going to ding an accuracy penalty. You're only going to get 1. So that should make the pass not as wildly inaccurate. It should just be short based on the situation. And then secondly, we updated the text. Our players told us they didn't really understand what past max throw power was trying to tell them. So that text has been updated, and it will now say out of range. And just as a reminder, what that means is when you see the out of range feedback and the pass comes up short, that means you are targeting a receiver who is deeper than your quarterback's max throw distance based on his throw power rating.
Got it. Cool. So we have that. Next up, we're going to talk about is top reported bugs. I only have one slide for this. I put everything in there that we kind of highlighted and things that you wanted to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and transition over to that real quick here. So first up, we have the rainbowed colored arms, pink arm equipment. This was pretty funny to see in the beta, but again, it is a beta. It isn't final. You want to talk a little bit about this one?
Pretty straightforward, just not final artwork done yet. But obviously we're not going to have that issue at launch.
Yeah. Hey, and if fingers crossed, if it creeps up, let us know. We'll look at it. And by the way, all these things I'm highlighting too on this slide right here is that all these are going to be fixed for launch. Incorrect player pictures. I think this was I think the number one thing people were highlighting is Lamar Jackson. This isn't Lamar Jackson. I think that a lot of
it was Lamar Jackson. It was just the wrong one. No, that like you said, our builds get behind, right? And so that was an issue that had been worked on weeks prior to the beta. It just didn't make the integration line to get into the beta. So it was actually already fixed by the time the beta.
Sorry, I meant the Lamar Jackson, right? Yeah. So visors not, the other ones I have here are visors not positioned on helmets correctly. Gamer tags cover the play clock when playing online. Coach adjustments reset every drive. Coverage depth adjustment sets to 0. I don't know if you want to talk about any of those. I know the last one, the coach adjustments reset every drive, was an important one, right? That players were able to find, especially kind of with this new addition. I don't know if there's anything more you want to talk about regarding the top reported bugs or any other bugs that you might be aware of that the team is looking to address.
Those were the main ones reported, and there was some other bugs in the previous feedback that we've already talked about that we were able to clean up. But specific to the coach adjustments, there was 2 issues there that actually got fixed. One was if you entered the coach adjustments menu but didn't make any changes, it would default your zone coverage depths to 0, which no one wanted. So that was an important one. And then secondly, if you were inside the red zone, your zone adjustments could drop your zone coverage guys out of the back of the end zone if you had it set previously to a depth deeper than the end zone. And so we also fixed that issue. And those were really important things to figure out they're in the beta because that was a new feature and it really had came in hot. It had come in just a little bit prior to the beta. So just another example of how valuable it is to get this feedback from our players to make the experience better. So just thank you to everyone out there who played, spent the time to give us the feedback. You helped us make the game better.
That's awesome. Let's talk about new superstar X factors and abilities. I think, this is the second year when it comes down to superstar X factors and abilities. I know, like right now, for people that, if you're checking out our social channels, you'll see a lot of stuff out there. I just want to give a huge shout out to Conrad. I don't know if you've seen some of his art right here, very comic bookish type of feel to it. And honestly, at the end of the day, I really love his art. He does some great work. But at the end of the day, what I want to talk about and really highlight here is that Superstar X Factors, Clint, are really about authenticity, right? And that's something that you guys brought up last year. And going into this year, the whole goal is to refine that. So, for those people out there, I've seen some comments out there of kind of maybe the approach and kind of portraying this felt very superhero-ish, but that's not really what the intent is. It's more like comic bookish. It's part of like the marketing campaign to kind of highlight these players, which is, at the end of the day, huge shout out to Conrad. I really do like his art, and it looks great. But do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing in the area of Superstar X Factors and abilities for this year, and kind of like the design philosophy around that, and what we can expect more of, like more information about it?
Yeah, so it's a big week. So we have the Gridiron notes today and this live stream, and then later in the week we're going to have the Gridiron notes for the new and rebalanced abilities, which a lot of news coming out that people can be really excited about. But to directly address your question, the art of the promo is whatever it is, comic book. These are superstars. We want to celebrate our superstars because those are the players that our fans connect with emotionally. I mean, we all do. Like, I'm a big Christian McCaffrey fan. If I see a really cool comic book photo of Christian McCaffrey, I think it's pretty cool. That's fine. What's really important is how the game plays with these abilities. And we knew after year one of adding a new set of game context in the form of Superstar X Factor abilities that we had more work to do to balance these abilities. And so what you're going to see in this Gridiron Notes that comes out Friday, number one priority was figuring out what needed to be rebalanced, what needed to be in some cases taken out, what needed to be changed. We did a very specific and emphasized pass on game balance, like I've been preaching, this entire production cycle. And we like what we have to offer. And then in addition, we are continuing to add more Superstar and X Factor abilities. We'll have plenty in for launch that really help promote our new features like the ball carrier skill stick, the new pass rush mechanics. That stuff's going to enhance those experiences. And then we're going to continue to add more abilities in post-launch, just like we have in the past. And to circle around, I know that I'm talking way too much, but to circle around, our abilities are based in authenticity. These are ways for us to celebrate the unique characteristics and the unique talents of these superstar athletes in the NFL. And we see it every Sunday. Guys can take over games. Michael Thomas, one of our 99 Club guys, you could be watching a Saints game and in the fourth quarter, he's getting the ball. Everyone in the world knows he's getting the ball. The defense knows he's getting the ball. And yet you still see Breeze firing it to him and completing it every time. That's kind of personification of what it means for a player to be in the zone and take over the game. In our game, those are things that players have to earn situationally and strategically. And that's how we pay off that authenticity of these superstar players.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that context. I know our players do as well. And, speaking of Gridiron Notes, I just want to let you guys know that the Gridiron Notes for this stream is live. You can go check that out. If you haven't seen in the chat, I've been kind of pushing the button here. There's like a message that says, if you want to learn more about Madden NFL Superstars, X Factors, abilities, you can check out that link. That link will actually take you there. They'll be updating that throughout the course of the week. So definitely check that out. But again, the Gridiron Notes will be coming out. Another set of Gridiron Notes will be coming out on Friday. Huge shout out to Nick. He's just given a lot of information, a lot of context. He's definitely a pleasure and delight to talk to. from time to time, just because just his understanding of what he wants to do regarding the rebalancing and making sure that these superstar X factors and abilities feel extremely authentic. So, Nick, I know you're watching. Thank you for all your work and all your help, especially getting that article out there, getting that level of transparency out to our players that they'll see on Friday. So, thank you for all that.
You're gonna have to get him on the show.
Yeah,
Agent
we will. Well, actually, I think we talked about podcasts, we talked about shows. So Nick definitely has expressed interest. So we're definitely going to get him on to kind of talk about. I know A-Dub is.
Favorite.
Yes, he will. The A-Dub, all that kind of stuff. I mean, all these guys. We sent them mics. So, I mean, I think our next Talking Madden is going to be around Madden Ultimate Team, and that's going to be somewhere in mid to a little bit later than mid-August. We're still working on that. We'll have some more information out there. Let me see if the Gridiron Notes highlights when that's going to be. Not Gibbs did a phenomenal job working with you to kind of get all this information. I'm checking here. He says our next Gridiron Notes will be on Friday, July 31st, but the next show is going to be probably a little bit past mid-August. So we'll talk a little bit about there. We'll have Jake Stein kind of coming through and talking about kind of what's happening to Madden Ultimate Team and giving a little more context and whatnot. The other thing, too, is for you guys out there that have not pre-ordered, here's just a little bit of information out there. We do have a Gridiron Notes article with all this information if you're looking for more details on specifically what are in the pre-order packages. The info is here. You can kind of see it right there. We have the standard edition. As you can see, we also have the deluxe edition, and we also have the MVP edition. All that stuff is detailed over on the Gridiron Notes at that portal. Check that out. We'll continue to provide you guys updates there. Clint, before we sign off, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to highlight?
I know I said it a bunch, but reemphasize thank you to all our players, not only for participating in the beta and not only for giving us feedback, but it's been a fantastic Madden 20 season. Players are still playing the game every day, still giving us feedback on Madden 20. That's fantastic to see. I actually got feedback yesterday from inside the NBA bubble at Disney World. NBA players were sending in feedback because they were playing Madden in their hotel rooms. So that was pretty cool. But most of all, with the times going on right now with the pandemic, sports are back. They seem to be a little bit on the bubble. Baseball's going through some stuff, and
especially in Florida.
Football's going through some stuff. What's really important, I just want to pass along to the community. Take care of each other, support each other, help each other out. Anything you could do for someone else is a blessing. And just take care of each other as a member of the Madden community. We're all in this together.
Well, Clint, I really appreciate your time and just kind of coming through. I'm just going through here, just making sure that we've covered everything for today. Again, I want to highlight, I know many of you guys are waiting for updates regarding Madden franchise, like core franchise mode and what's happening there. Sean Grady went ahead and shared with you guys that he's been listening to that message of fixed Madden franchise. I can definitely tell you that the team has diligently been working on kind of a communication plan out to you guys that should be coming out by mid-August, maybe a little bit sooner. So stay tuned for that. There'll be a lot of details around that for you guys. We mentioned that earlier in the stream. Didn't want to go into this stream without addressing that. I see a lot of hashtags about fixed Madden card art. Hey, you know what? Jake Stein will be here. He'll be highlighting some things about what's going on. So I think it's there's some exciting things that they are working on. And Jake will be here to really talk about all that kind of stuff and what's going to be happening in Madden Ultimate Team this year, kind of changes that are going to be occurring as well. But yeah, that's kind of a wrap for me. Clint, I really do appreciate you coming by, man. Any last farewells before we sign off? I'm going to go ahead and put the screen on there, put a little bit of music, and then sign off, man, because that's just, I like the music.
So, great stream, man. Thank you for having me on. Always enjoy talking to the community. And, please don't make fun of my Harry Potter books back there, all right?
Did someone make fun of your Harry Potter books last time?
I got one about it. It was awesome, though. It was awesome.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. We'll be back. Make sure Gridiron Notes coming out at the end of this week with more details, more specifics, and a little more transparent information around Superstar X Factors coming from Nick. Huge shout out to him for all of his help. A huge shout out to the team, Paige, everyone kind of putting this together. And then not just that, but we should be back by maybe a little bit past mid-August with a Madden Ultimate Team live stream. I'll be back with you guys. And again, thank you guys for coming in. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.